All set to begin.
Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome to the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Appeals Committee meeting. Today's July 18th, 2023. My name is Allison Alessi. I'm going to read the following. To all persons deemed interested or affected by the Town of Barnstable's Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission ordinance under Chapter 112, Article 3 of the Code of the Town of Barnstable, you are hereby notified that a hearing is being held at the Town Hall, 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass. Selectmen's Conference Room, second floor at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, July 8th at 2023. Please note that this meeting will be recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 and in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A 20. So we officially call the meeting to order. And we'll do a quick roll call. My name's Allison Alessi.
Marianne Agresti.
And then Jim has the staff has asked to read in a particular article.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. So just as this committee doesn't meet often, I thought it would be important to quickly go over the purpose of this appeals committee under section 112.33 under appeals, section B. Any person or persons aggrieved by a determination of the historic commission or by its failure to act as specified in this article may, within 20 calendar days after filing of such notice with the town clerk, appeal to the committee in writing. And so you do have an appeal to this committee in writing of a decision from the Historic Commission. The committee now shall hear all pertinent evidence and act upon such appeals within 30 calendar days after the filing of such appeals. And this meeting is held within 30 days of that such appeal. The decision of this committee shall be determined by a majority vote of the committee members. If they determine that the commission action is unsupported by the evidence or it exceeds the authority of the commission, they may annul the commission's decision or remand the case for further action by the commission. The findings of the committee shall be binding on the applicant and the commission unless a further appeal is sought in Superior Court. So tonight, this committee's actions is to uphold the original decision held by the commission, annul the decision by the commission, or to remand it back for further action. This committee is to review the commission's actions as it pertains to the application that was before the commission. Tonight is not to judge the project itself anew. Tonight's not a night to enter in new evidence for a project. Tonight is to review what was reviewed by the commission and confirm that they rendered that decision properly and with evidence. So with that, I'll hand it back.
Okay. So we have one item on the agenda tonight, our new business. Marianne, you want to read the appeal? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Appeal 2023-01, Stuart Bornstein, Shoestring Properties LP, 110 School Street and 115 School Street, Hyannis. Shoestring Properties LP has appealed the decision of the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission, HMSWHDC, to deny the applicant's request for a certificate of appropriateness for a marine storage facility at 110 School Street and 115 School Street, Hyannis. The subject property is located at 110 School Street and 115 School Street, Hyannis, as shown on Assessor's Map 326 as Parcel 121 and 326, Map 326 as Parcel 125.
Okay. So do we have a motion to open the appeal?
I motion to open the appeal.
I second. So we vote? Yes. You have to
No
vote.
discussion.
All in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry, the favor to open. Yes,
Yeah, sorry, I know, we're
No,
a small
that's okay.
committee, and we're rusty. We don't meet
Sorry,
very often.
excuse that.
No, me too.
Yes, I vote yes.
And I vote yes,
appeal.
so we are open. Okay, so we have received an appeal of the mentioned denial. I personally have watched both the original application and watched the continued application on video, and we have read the appeal. Were you able to watch those as well? Okay. We did that. So would the applicant like to present any further evidence?
Thank you, members of the committee. I've always found it interesting that the commission, and usually the commission's higher than a committee when it comes to public boards.
Well,
So, members of the
long
committee,
name.
Paul Revere on behalf of Shoestring Properties. I have with me Stuart Bornstein, the principal of Shoestring Properties, and his son, who walks my dog regularly, Aaron Bornstein.
Great.
This, in my opinion, ought to be the shortest and simplest decision that you can ever make. You've watched the video of the meeting, and that's what I have here on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
The written decision, signed here by Ms. Cheryl Powell, says, at the conclusion of the hearing, a motion was made and seconded to find the application presented, materials proposed, and certain undetermined specifications were not compatible with the preservation and protection of the district. Present in voting in opposition to this finding was Cornelius Cawley. Present and voting in favor of this finding were Cheryl Powell, Jack Cray, Tom Doherty, Matt Clark, and Laura Cronin. And this is signed on 6/15 by Chairman Powell. I have on my computer, and I think we can all agree that it's authentic. It's Channel 18, and hopefully it's still hooked up to my phone. It isn't for the moment. The actual vote, oh, it is, okay. The actual vote at this time, okay? And I'm gonna go for maximum volume.
If you hold up to a microphone, please. And for disapproval and it's approval.
Okay.
Maybe they.
Can we
Well, I can-
stop this?
Yeah.
Yep.
I can stop it again. Excuse me, I'm trying to work on my presentation here, okay? If you'd like me to interrupt yours as it's going on, I can take you off gear
Guys,
too.
let's focus back here, please.
Yep.
Okay, well, Miss,
Thank you.
you know, I'm here.
So we have.
Very simply, what I played for you, and you can go get it again, is Cornelius Crowley, quote, move that the commission find that this application be compatible with the preservation and protection of the district. That was what the motion was. If you watch what was going on there, Mr. Crowley was the only one who voted in favor of that finding, and all the other members voted against it. Yet the decision, signed by Ms. Powell, a government record, says exactly the opposite. Done. Finished. Annulled decision. Wrong. This decision is incorrect. To begin with, if you watch the meeting minutes, I can play it again, or we can get them to play it up there. Watch not the meeting minutes, the actual meeting. You will see the motion. There's also a secondary problem with this, and this again is in the meeting at 1:02 and 20 seconds, okay? Ms. Powell, the chairman, says, we make findings and then we make a decision. There was never any vote to make a decision. There was just a vote on findings, quote, move the commission find that this application be compatible with the preservation and protection of the district. Those findings didn't pass, but there was never a vote to deny a certificate of appropriateness. In fact, basically, when I look at this, it says any person or persons aggrieved by a determination of the commission or by its failure to act as specified in this article, okay? My client, Mr. Bornstein, is aggrieved that his matter was denied, and he also, or at least was denied by something that doesn't reflect the actual record, but he also, I think, has a very good point that the commission never acted on his application. Okay? Now, It's very important, and there's a case, the Boston Globe. You remember those old things where you could pull out a newspaper, you put in a quarter and you pull out a newspaper? We're denied to put those in the Beacon Hill area by the Beacon Hill Architectural Committee. The Supreme Judicial Court said the commission, and it's a parallel act of 40C, it's not an actual 40C, it's an architectural review commission. The commission is required to record the reasons for its decision and can set policy through the results of its adjudication. This requirement promotes judicial review provided in Section 10, which review seeks to curb arbitrary action for which the commission's reasons are unwarranted by the evidence or insufficient in law. The point I'm making there is that the Supreme Judicial Court has stated that commissions need to explain, make findings, explain why they're doing something so that they can be reviewed by another group. Here we have something that's just says a finding like it says the opposite of what was actually voted on, which says we find it compatible, not compatible. It doesn't give a reason. The applicant doesn't have any, I'll call it, roadmap as to what he could do to come back in to comply. Now, I'd like to stop at this moment, okay, because I think what I put forth is fairly straightforward as to a reason to annul the decision. I could address the merits first, but I'm not sure, number one, I ask you if you want to ask me any questions about this, or Mr. Kupfer, or what you'd like to do in terms of perhaps that issue of reviewing what was stated, whether we want to, I'll call this part one, whether we want to stop at part one, or would you like to go to part two?
I'll leave it to the committee if you'd like. I can try and pull up the meeting for you, or...
Yeah, I think I'm definitely more prepared and qualified to speak about like the content of what was reviewed. I don't feel qualified. I'm not sure what the ramifications are. It does seem like there was an error in the voting record.
So I guess I need some clarification. So are you basically asking that for a remand today? Is that what your request is for?
I think you
because
need
that seems to be what you're
annul
asking
the
for.
decision. Then the question, or annul this document, because this is not what was voted on at all. They call it a decision, but it certainly, when I look at it, it's not what was voted on at the meeting. And there's a secondary question about what the results of it is. I'd like to ask you to find that they failed to act on it because they didn't make findings and make a decision.
However, we do have the minutes of that meeting in front of us, which have been approved, and those are also an official document. And so it wouldn't be unusual to sort of record the conversation as part of the minutes and then to summarize in that statement that it was discussed and not simply list everything that was discussed. Now, you're saying, though, that they reversed the vote. I would need to watch the video again to look for that specifically because I wasn't looking for it at that time and didn't note that.
Now, would you like me to attempt to address the merits while Jim, or gee, how can you figure out how to get that?
So ultimately, I guess it's up to the committee. You didn't provide this to me in advance, so
Yeah.
we weren't prepared to bring it up. It's up to the committee. Happy to work on that, or you can continue on with your discussion based on.
Well, no, if he's asking us to annul the decision, then there's no point in having a discussion about the merits of the project. So that's why my first question was, what exactly are you asking for?
Well, I think this document that claims to be a decision that was filed with the town clerk clearly does not reflect what occurred at that meeting.
So
the decision ought to be annulled. It's arbitrary and capricious.
What's the official policy if we were to all agree that it was misrecorded? Do we start all over? Do they kind of reapply as if, what happens?
Well, so first, I think we would need to review that tape and confirm that it, in fact, is, my recollection is there was discussions of how to phrase it, and it may have gone multiple ways. So we can certainly review that tape. Again, it wasn't provided for discussion in advance, so we could have those discussions in terms of how that was phrased and how it's reflected in a decision and whether that warrants as, a remand or an annul or what have you.
Should we do that?
I think so.
I think we have to do that, or else there's no point in continuing the conversation.
Can I say something, if I may? No matter what I bring in front of this historical board, these two young ladies are going to vote against it. No matter what I bring. It's a loaded gun. Paul's going one direction, showing it wasn't, but they're claiming no matter what I do on this, they're not going to approve it. So to be in front of them is not fair. They got 21 minutes of harassing me on TV on the main project we had originally. We got tapes. It's being reviewed by the town now because overstepping their situation. Last time I was in the historical thing, everybody that voted for me has been kicked off the historical board. She intimidated them. And they'll come in and tell you that.
Mr. Bornstein, that's why there's an appeals committee.
Excuse me?
That's why there's an appeals committee.
Okay, so that's why I'm here. I would like to have you, if it's possible, we did a rendering of a project that fits the neighborhood better than what's out there right now. And there's no reason that it's an allowed use. There's no reason that this architectural, historical, and you guys are the judge, shouldn't be allowed to be built. We've done everything possible to fit it nicely in the neighborhood. Traditionally, storage facilities are flat roofs, ugly looking. We gave you a rendering, and we made it as good looking as what we can. If you look what's around my neighborhood, I have trucks on one side of me, huge trailer trucks sitting there all day long, constantly on the whole long side. And the other side, I have a big fence with a big house on the other side that has no views. This is not a bad-looking project we wanted to do. We got turned down with their help, a lot of their help, of the project I did before. Something we had 42 meetings and was approved by everybody, and they harassed the planning board so bad that they intimidated two of the new members.
I really think we should keep our discussion
All right,
focused
all right,
on
all right,
this.
okay,
I understand that.
all
We
right.
heard your other project in another iteration
Okay.
too. We are the appeals committee. We heard your project. So let's focus on what's
All right,
being
all
presented
right.
in the meeting that we had.
Why don't I
Are we
address the
doing this?
substance for a
Yeah.
moment? Address the substance, because Mr. Bornstein brought it up. Okay,
I feel like your
just take me a couple
presentation is
minutes.
quite fractured, though, because for I don't know
Yeah.
if you agree, but for me, you put something on the table that really affects the discussion. It's hard for me to proceed without answering the question you first posed. Was your expectation was that you were going to throw that out and then we were going to just push it
Well,
aside?
I was going to ask you, if you conclude it invalidates this decision,
We need to watch the video. We can't conclude.
okay, and I brought the video here, and that's something that I said that you'll want to take a couple-minute recess and see if you can get it up here on the screen?
It's up to the committee.
I frankly would have preferred that we were prepared because
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time
Exactly.
reviewing this. I read this thoroughly. I prepare for these meetings very carefully. I don't just show up. So to have a video just sort of and to not be able to prepare and understand how it fits into the bigger context, for me, I don't know about how you feel.
No,
Allison, but
I
for
agree.
Me, I don't think that's a proper way for us to assess the situation.
Well, to me, it was self-evident. In fact, one of my questions would have been to begin, have you watched the video? Because if you watch the video, the motion is to approve it, and that's not what the decision says.
What we're hearing is that there was a discussion about how it would be worded, so we'd like to go
Right.
back and
Right.
listen to it again.
So-
but we can't listen to it on your laptop, and I don't know. I just
Pull it
don't
up
feel
on
like I
Google
wanna-
Chrome right there. Take 2 minutes. If you can pull up Google Chrome, who's broadcasting that?
It's up to the committee again.
I don't know. I agree. I think that this is, we have to, I don't know.
If you need more time
I
to
think
discuss
so.
that, we can certainly continue the matter and,
Well, it also
reschedule.
sounds like there would need to be some discussion about what the implications
I
would
agree
be.
with that. I don't feel
There
called.
doesn't seem to be
Right.
any understanding of what those implications are, and without that.
Right, if this is an arrow, right.
Yeah,
Like, we're architects, not attorneys.
right? So,
I agree. I just want this to stand on its own merits. I mean, we got it all designed, all engineered, all architects have got this all built out, and here's what the project's going to look like. There's no smoking gun. It's a marine storage facility. It has no utilities. It's just to store boats and marine equipment. It's a metal building. It's cream-colored white with a light marine blue. And the place it faces, we put windows on the side. They look like houses, and they look a lot better than a lot of the things in the area. Paul has taken some pictures of just what's around the neighborhood.
So those sort of pictures and things should have been submitted at the original
were.
application.
They
The
had-
context, not this, the context, right? I mean, I don't know if we're getting into this or not, or if we're just talking about the annul.
Yeah, I mean, the whole annul thing sort of threw us, right?
Right.
If you wanted us to take that seriously, I don't know, maybe I'm being too linear, but I just kind of feel like
That's a different thing than
if we
hearing.
decide that the decision wasn't recorded appropriately.
Correct.
Then we have one path. If we decide that it was recorded appropriately, then we have another path. And it strikes
agree.
me that depending on that decision, then this discussion takes a certain form.
Right.
To have this discussion about the appropriateness of the project seems premature, given what was first stated.
If we were to leave Paul's point of view outside of what we're talking about and put what we presented to the board, what's here, and as one member said, he thought the land was too valuable to put a storage facility on. It shouldn't be there. That was his thinking. Because the land was too valuable, he decided he didn't like the project. I mean, this is the justice of what we had against it. Here's the project. If you think the project is feasible, we can end this, and here it is. This is it. And they were given all these drawings. They had them all. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what's there. We had an old restaurant down there. There have been hotels.
You're asking us to ignore his first part of the presentation?
No, I think we've got to, I think you ought to hear, my basic feelings, I think you ought to hear all the evidence. I asked you just if you wanted to stop. Hear all the evidence, okay? And then you can close the public hearing, okay? And maybe we will agree to continue to allow, to get the answer to my first argument to the question. But I think we're all here. It's not going to take that long to put out what material is there and get it in the record to complete our appeal. But I think there are 2 points to this. One is there is this problem that the decision has a problem underlying it. The second thing is, I'll say, the substantive merits of the decision. And if we talk about the substantive merits, you can annul the decision and you could remand it with comments on the substantive merits, if you think. But we're here. I think we ought to go forward. But I just
You're
brought
a
up
lawyer, but I'm surprised that you're saying that, because in my mind, that's not
believing
how
that
the law
argument.
works. I feel like you've asked a question, and if we have optional paths based on the question you've asked, then we shouldn't be having a further discussion
Right.
based on the question you've asked. I mean, I feel like that's illogical to me.
And if I may, I think one of the things that I think might be throwing this committee is that the appeal was made for the basis of the decision, not that the decision was written incorrectly. So that's very.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
legally, this doesn't align.
Right.
This appeal was based on what was reviewed by
Right, so
this
if we
committee.
made some other decision to either uphold or remand, that might be null and void too, based on what
Exactly,
happened
because
at
we're
the.
making decisions based on a decision that you're asking us to make null. So like
I'm
legally, there's
asking-
no.
You make alternative arguments as
Yeah.
an attorney, and there's alternative arguments. And this one is there, and then there's the merits.
But I go back to the appeal application itself, right here, right? So the petition for appeal. The reason for the appeal is the decision was arbitrary and capricious. The proposed buildings fit with the scale, placement, materials, design, and detail of the other buildings around Hyannis Harbor and are most appropriate for the proposed use of marine storage, which is an allowed use in the zoning district. That's the reason for the appeal. That's what we're here to discuss. And if you're saying that we should be discussing that instead, then this appeal application needs to be resubmitted appropriately.
No. You would have to have a procedural law that says we are limited to what we submitted. Our presentation is right now, okay? And it's, as I see this very simply, we filed our petition. We asked for a hearing to explain our reasons why. I'm here. okay? And I just pointed out to me this gross incorrectness. And I didn't think it was all that difficult that if you watch the hearing to see they never voted and literally put that thing on. The exact words of the motion are, I move, where's, got it over here. Move that the commission find that this application be compatible with the preservation and protection of the district. And it was made by Mr. Crowley and he voted for it. Okay, and I'm ready to present on the merits, which I was going to. I just stopped for a second to ask if you didn't want to hear it, because it's so obvious to me that this matter, that decision is not what was voted on by the board. This written document, which is in the town clerk's office, Ann Quirk, who says how she prides of keeping the records and having the correct records, the historical data. This is not what happened at the meeting. Okay, that's all.
Sorry,
No,
maybe too
go.
much, but I question what your goal is here, frankly, because if it was recorded correctly, the vote would have been the same. So I'm questioning, are you just trying to call out someone's,
I am
what
trying
is
to
the point?
annul the decision, get a decision that what was done by the committee on that day, okay, was arbitrary and capricious, okay? And I am appealing this decision. This is the decision. And this is what they call the decision. It's signed by the chairman as the decision. It does not accurately reflect the records. It would be, literally like the planning board voting for a project and the chairman signing something that is different, and it's different on the substance of what was acted on. And it also shows, as I said to you, that there was never any decision on the certificate of appropriateness. There was just a motion. There was never a vote to deny it, et cetera. And as I said, you can look in there, if you watch the video, you see the chairman recognizes that she's supposed to make findings. There's supposed to be a vote on findings and a vote on a decision. And they didn't have one.
That's one merit, and then here's the other merit of what we presented. So you have the right, you have the jurisdiction.
But you see that if we go back and do the research and watch the meeting and the vote is annulled, then why would we have this other presentation?
You're the commission that gets to say if this is good or bad.
But you're saying it's annulled.
Well, I don't know. That's not the issue. The issue is.
We just said that.
Well, all right, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a common sense guy.
Yep.
We'd like you to make a determination, regardless of what Paul has, of this project that we presented to the historical board, that it fits what we want to do with the neighborhood, and if you're in favor of it, we can go ahead and attempt to get a building permit and build it. But right now, until that issue gets solved, we're not anywhere. We went out of our way to make this as compatible with the neighborhood as you could make a building. Regardless, it could be just a house. It could be three units in a long house. It's just a clean looking, plenty of shrubs, plenty of trees. The site plan, we made it. There's only 12% of the land coverage on this. We didn't overdo it. We made it open, and we made it good looking. And there's a big need for this in town. Like, unbelievable people want this.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little more about, if you look at the application here in the site plan, you'll see the buildings generally run north to south. The reason for that is some of it is practical, some of it is also beneficial to the historic district and the harbor. That is, if you, and I have a photo to do it, and I brought these photos because I think that you should be able to look at them because it's what members of a committee do. They go to a property and they look at the surrounding area. Now, one of the things that the committee is supposed to look at in terms of making their decision is the setting. That is surrounding buildings. How does it fit in? So you've been around Hyannis. I've seen it. This is the steamship authority.
Sorry, I just want to say, we're both on this committee because we work and live in this town. So, and when we are reviewing an application, of course, we're going by to see the context. I'm just a little concerned that you're submitting stuff that wasn't submitted at the previous hearing. I think we talked about that. I mean, I think the appropriate time to show the precedent for these types of buildings and what's in the neighborhood is at the initial hearing. We're reviewing their decision. We're not reviewing new applications.
I personally disagreed with Mr. Kupfer's decision of how it's your decision. I find your
But wait,
decision.
that's
Just bear with me.
okay, but he read our charge,
Yeah.
he didn't make a personal opinion. He read the charge of our committee.
I know, but he said that you're supposed to not find, or words to the effect of not find the facts anew. And the general review of administrative appeals is that you find the facts anew, and then you decide whether on the facts that you found, the committee's decision, or commission's decision, okay, could be supported on the facts you found. And you're actually supposed to give deference to their decision. That's all. And that's the standard review of
All right,
special
you have
permits.
that. I'm sorry, I think I...
Section B. You can have it.
I just wanted to specifically read what our purview is. The decision of the committee shall be determined by a majority vote of the committee members. If they determine that the commission action is unsupported by evidence or exceeds the authority of the commission, they may annul the commission decision or remand the case for further action by the commission. The findings of this committee shall be binding on the applicant and the commission unless a further appeal is sought in Superior Court.
And the only thing I had new here is pictures of the surrounding area, which are just showing exactly what anybody who goes to the area would see. Okay? And so I'm just pointing out, as was stated to the committee at the hearing, next door, okay, is trucks every day. It's the immediately adjacent property. If you view to the east, or actually this is northeast, you will see a building in the foreground which has aluminum siding on it at the corner of School Street and South Street, and Champ House next to it, which is just a very block-structured building, nothing unique historical to it. But I know that is part of the setting. If you look due to the east, and mind you, it does take you outside of the district because Mr. Bornstein does own the last property in the district, you see Cape Cod Hospital right down the road. You see the large Lewis Bay Court development. In that regard, and I found this incredibly interesting as you walk around there, Lewis Bay Court has buildings on it right adjacent to the district, okay, across the street from the property, that are cream garage style, like Mr. Bornstein proposed. A further point that is obvious if you come down here, and I mentioned it before, if you look at the direction of the buildings, this is a photograph taken from across the street at my eye level, which I'm not a very tall person. You can see the harbor. So while he has the buildings aligned, he's preserved the benefit of being able to see the harbor from his property. If you look down School Street that extends past the property, you can see the Steamship Authority on the right, and if you look carefully at these photos I'm showing you there, you'll see a fishing vessel being emptied into a refrigerator truck at the bottom of the road. That is the setting of the area. And then, of course, if you look across the way, you see marinas of Hyannis Marina, large industrial buildings. The members of the committee, if you look at how they spoke, and if you look at both meetings, spent a lot of time talking about things that were completely irrelevant to this matter. They didn't talk about how does it fit into the setting, the colors of the building. There was all sorts of discussion at various times about matters of storage of hazardous materials, smell, demand, and the like. At the committee meeting, Mr. Bornstein presented, which you have in front of you. This is exactly it. The rendering showing what the buildings will look like. If you compare them to the Lewis Bay buildings, these actually, garage, similar type buildings, have windows on them. Multi-pane, open windows, similar to a more historical look to them. To add to the shack, Mr. Bornstein explained, and I think it's Mr. Kupfer has mentioned in here, how as boat storage, it is fully compliant with zoning. And Mr. Bornstein explained how he can't build something out of wood in this area to meet zoning compliance, okay? He shows the landscaping on the site plan here, showing trees throughout the property, which if you compare that to the near bay, right across the street is the parking lot for the Lewis Bay Court condominium development. It looks exactly the same, a parking lot with trees around it and a garage building. In the setting, what he has proposed is very consistent with the setting. It's not like he's putting it in between two ancient captain's homes. Zoning said you can do boat storage here. Mr. Bornstein has proposed what is a working harbor use on the harbor. I actually went back historically and looked at some of the old photos of the harbor. There were just old wooden shacks along the harbor at the time that were storage historically in that area. Simple working buildings.
And there's no repairs in there, no gas storage, clean, no hazardous issues in there. And everybody comes in there, we check it completely before they get
We're
in.
not reviewing for use.
Oh, I understand, I'm just giving you an
But that's,
overview.
we don't feel that the committee took into account its compliance with zoning or its setting. Instead, there was much discussion on issues that were outside of the realm of the matter, and that what is proposed here is, as I say, on the last lot of the historic district at all, okay? And its setting around it is not particularly historic. Its immediate setting is essentially the steamship authority, is, as my first picture showed, a bunch of trucks idling all day. And that's in and out all the time. It's a working harbor. And that's what Mr. Bornstein proposed. And we add that he proposed colors that are in the color chart consistent. In fact, there was some interesting comments that suggested to me that the commission in some way was trying to extend this out because they're coming up with new, more stringent requirements to apply to Mr. Bornstein's project in their revised guidelines. And that is right again in the record of the hearing. I mean, your goal is to decide, one, whether the decision should be annulled, whether it was not supported by the facts or arbitrary and capricious. And I think the record submits that it is under the circumstance of this location.
Do you have anything else to add?
Aaron?
I just want to say I was present at the last meeting, and I have not gone back and seen the videos or anything, but one of the things that stands out in my mind more than anything else, the committee seemed to be absolutely fascinated and more concerned with the fact that people might store things in there other than what the allowed use is, which shouldn't really be their concern. That's a building enforcement issue, not their concern, but they said it many times. And I find that particularly bothersome, and I don't understand why they kept hitting that point home when it shouldn't have any bearing on the decision to what to do with this property.
Right. As I think you well know, interior arrangements are outside of the purview.
Right.
It's exterior.
Right.
Yes.
I guess before we respond, I do want to just read into the record what the criteria is for the commission's determinations. I think that might be helpful when we're kind of thinking about their conversation and what they should be reviewing projects for, just as a reminder. So this is under 112-32, criteria for commission determinations. In deliberating on applications for certificates, the commission shall consider, among other things, the historical and architectural value and significance of the site, building, structure, setting, or place, the general exterior design, scale, color, placement on the lot, including dimension and setback, arrangement, proportion, texture, material of the building or structure, setting, topography, landscaping, and general appearance of the features involved, and the relation of such features to similar features of buildings and structures in the surrounding area, and the position of such buildings or structures in relation to the streets or ways or other buildings and structures. B, in the case of new construction or additions to existing buildings or structures, the commission shall consider the appropriateness of the size, shape, location of the building and structure, both in relation to the land area upon which the building or structure is situated and to the buildings, structures, and general setting in the vicinity. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about kind of what they're supposed to be reviewing for.
Yeah. No, and I think we kind of hit on most of those factors. There's no historical or architectural value of the site, building, or structure or setting that's there, except maybe it's on the harbor front, and we're going consistent with zoning.
We're not on the harbor. We're removed.
Yeah, we're actually
We know
on
where
the
your
river.
site is. We know the context.
General exterior, arrangement, proportions, texture of materials, the building and structure and setting. We've shown you what's here, the color, okay? The topography, landscaping, and general appearance of the features involved in the relation of such features to similar buildings and structures in the surrounding area. That's what I was pointing out here, is that there are similar buildings. The topography is such, and the arrangement of the buildings is that it maintains the ability to see the harbor from the surrounding area. Mr. Bornstein's buildings are 14 to 16 feet high, which allows any house, if you go School Street, rises in elevation, can see right over this area.
Mm-hmm.
So it does remain those positive things, okay? And similar to surrounding it, in the position of such buildings in relation to streets or ways or to other buildings and structures. Just address that. They turned the buildings, they kept them away. We have a landscaping plan. The landscaping is similar to what is on the parking lot across the street in that area.
We also had a color chart, any color they wanted, historical blues and whites. They could pick from 9 different blues. We had no problem with that.
So,
I just want to be clear, have we decided that we're actually going to review the merits of this, and then at another point, if we decide that the decision of the committee based on is annulled, that our decision is also annulled? Is that what we're doing to sort of be efficient with time?
But I'd rather go with your decision. I'm not going with Paul's situation. I'd rather look at the merits of it.
so we're not waiving that.
No, you're not waiving, but I don't think it'll be an issue. If we get a favorable vote for what you see here, we don't have to do anything about it. That's our option.
Yeah.
It's only our purview, so. But we really went out of the way. We kept less density on this. We made plenty of area around it. We didn't pack it in. We could have put 35% more product in there. Flat roofs, these are arch roofs, and we arched them up high so they look good. They weren't just little sheds. We made them look like they belong there. Like if it was to build a house, the same structure.
I don't know where we are logistically either in terms of, do you have any other
Yeah, so what I could recommend here is, so you've heard a lot from the applicant in terms of, the merits of the
Right.
project. I think certainly, at some point we should open it up to the public for
Definitely.
any consideration and comments. This committee, based on what you've heard and what you can hear, my recommendation would be one of two. It's either, you're upholding the original decision or a remand back to the committee to, if there are details missing or anything like that, you could remand it back. I don't know what an annul would really do to solve any of the matters, but we could certainly have those discussions. I really think we could talk about those two items there, upholding if you think there's just not enough material here, or remand back because there's clear evidence that maybe there's certain details that were not provided or not sufficient, and the commission should take another look at this.
And does a remand give the applicant opportunities to revise the proposal?
Revise the proposal, provide any additional information that the committee may need, and perhaps clean up any decision items that may be necessary. Certainly.
Are you comfortable with that?
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah. We basically, there's not much I could do to revive them. The only thing I leave open is the number of doors, because we don't know what we're dealing with for people. We may, instead of having 8 doors, I may have 6 doors or 9 doors. We put a limit of no more than 40 doors on the whole project. And there's different size doors. These are oversized for boat storage. And other than that, we went really out of our way. We went work with architects, designers. There aren't too many storage facilities, this Marie, that look as good as this. They usually pack them with a lot of stuff. We don't allow any storage outside. There's no boat stored outside. Minimum, no parking except for loading and unloading. We've just gone out of our way to make this look like a plus. We own a lot of property in town. We didn't want to make it look like a dump, and we wanted to be proud of what it is. And we think we did a nice job of what we did. We're open to any suggestions of adding anything. I can't put any more trees on there. Basically, the building is what the building's is supposed to do. I think at the end it'll look like a nice project, be pretty well received.
So maybe now we'll open this to public hearings. Is that where we are in the process? So do we have any public comments?
All right. My name's Cheryl Powell. You probably know who she was.
Come up.
All right. I think most of you know me. And Mr. Revere, it's a pleasure meeting you. You and I have spoken on the phone before, not with regard to this. And you were very helpful.
Thank you.
So I've listened very carefully to what was said. I want to first, I'm actually talking for 2 people. The first one is your Mr. Cowley you referred to, or Cawley, sorry, I keep mispronouncing his name. He cannot come tonight because it's his birthday. But he asked that this be read into, oh, I'm sorry, I keep doing that. Can you hear me better now? He asked, do you need me to repeat that? Okay.
No.
So he asked that this be read in. It's from Commissioner Cornelius Cowley, appeal of dockside application denial, date July 18th, 2023. To whom it may concern, I am a commissioner of the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission. I am writing regarding the appeal of the denial of an application to build a marine storage facility in what is commonly referred to as the dockside premises. I voted in favor of the application, which everybody's acknowledged here. However, I am concerned that there may be some misinterpretation of my vote. My support of the application should not be misconstrued to mean that I believe the applicant should prevail on this appeal. To the contrary, I believe that the applicant was afforded a full and fair opportunity to make his presentation to the entire commission. There were questions asked by several commissioners regarding alterations that were made to the original application. Those questions were not answered to their satisfaction. Indeed, the applicant was given the opportunity to return at a later date to discuss these concerns in his application. He declined this invitation. Chairwoman Powell conducted a proper meeting promoting dialogue about the project and inviting commentary. It cannot be said that any voice was left unheard. As such, in my opinion, the applicant was afforded due process and the decision was made within the parameters of the Commission's authority. I thank you for your time and consideration. Cornelius Cowley. And did you get a copy of this? Would you like a
copy? We can get you a copy.
I can hand you this one.
I'll get one from you, Jen.
Okay, I was just going to offer you this one.
Yeah.
Mr. Cowley is also a local attorney.
What was that last part?
I said Mr. Cowley is also a local attorney.
He's a local attorney.
Yes, he is.
Thank you.
He's not representing as an attorney. That letter is clear. It's as a commissioner. Just want to be clear. I want to also read, thank you for reading out 11232, which shows, the structure, site, and height, and all that. What is also is our purpose, the purpose of the commission, the HHDC. The purpose of this article is to promote the educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the inhabitants of the town of Barnstable and the town's unique community character through the preservation and protection of the distinctive characteristics of the building structures and places significant in the history and architecture of Barnstable, and through the preservation, maintenance, and improvement of appropriate settings for such building structures and places, and the encouragement of new design, which is compatible with the existing historical and community character, and through the benefits resulting to the economy of the said town by preserving and enhancing the amenities of the historical aspects of the various villages and areas which make Barnstable a desirable place to live and for tourists to visit. That is our purview. There is the other part that defines more specifically. So one of the things, if your property were one further away, it would not come under our jurisdiction. We did try very hard. We were actually encouraged Mr. Bornstein to come back for us and to address the questions that we still had, but he would not do so. I am told that there would only be abuse of discretion, which is a polite way of saying a trial judge has made a bad mistake, clearly against reason and evidence, or against established law during the trial or ruling of a motion that a person did not get a fair trial. We bent over backwards to try to be fair. And you're right, we weren't bothered about the colors. You keep bringing up colors. You more than ample colors, and I thank you for that. But that wasn't the issue. There were other issues that came up, and things kept changing, and new material kept being submitted, and we needed to clarify those. I have plenty more things, but I think you're going to, my interpretation tonight, you're probably going to continue to give you a chance to watch the tape.
I'm not sure. Okay.
So in that case, I will go on. So if I find page 1, 564, 312. So one of the things that Mr. Bornstein, and I want to first acknowledge Mr. Bornstein has done a lot for this town, and I fully acknowledge that, and we've also many times expressed appreciation. But we have to also go by our purview. One of the things that kept coming up that we stumbled on is it's whatever the market dictates, whatever the market needs. We cannot do a certificate of appropriateness based on what the market wants. It has to be based on what's presented to us. Laura brought up, this is Ms. Cronin, Commissioner Cronin, who showed up tonight, with regard to, wanted some things to be clarified, and she was concerned that the new information that was brought up, and she mentioned this several times, did not match the application. She wanted a revised application that matched the new information that was brought before us. I'm trying to not have to read all this, I'm just bringing up. So Mr. Bornstein respectfully kept saying it met all the requirements, height, density, and color. But it didn't meet some of the other things. I note that in our purview, character of the town, the distinctive character and historical character of the town comes up just in what I read to you 5 times. So, that's a lot of what we are tasked with doing.
May I speak?
No, let her finish.
Let her finish, please.
Thank you. So you had mentioned that housing wasn't really as important. I think perhaps not on this particular property, but I think everybody in this town knows that housing is an issue. I'm trying to not... The other thing you had mentioned is that you tried to do something, and how, I don't know why you kept speaking about Commissioner Cronin and myself, but you said we went all the time go berserk. We don't go berserk. We're just trying to do our jobs and abide by the purview that we have. You mentioned that it's the epicenter of the homeless and all the trucks. I have made it a task, and I believe Mr. Revere mentioned about, usually people on a commission go and drive by and have a look at the property. I have made it my task, since this came before us, to go down at least twice a day and see at the area, how many trucks are there, how many, in the whole area, of course. Is there a big homeless population? Do I see people? It also has to do with my own work that, dealing with some of the homeless. Is this something we need to be addressing? As Commissioner Doherty had mentioned, at 40 minutes into it, when you challenged him, he said, we're just trying to improve, but are we supposed to just throw up our hands? Are we going to try to do our jobs? So, don't want to... You had mentioned when I asked you about the historical character, you said, well, we'll put up a few nets and we'll put some lobster pots out. But then you also mentioned that if we compare it to Main Street, where it's kind of downtrodden in some areas because of the lobster pots and the things that are out. So I don't want to take too much time. I would save it for if we come back. And Commissioner Doherty, Tom Doherty, who lives down this way, felt when you challenged him, he said he just doesn't want to make a horrible waste of such a beautiful spot, which it is. And you had said that the town had just left it there for 20 years. It was being used, I believe, as a restaurant at the time. We also noted for you that aluminum is in writing discouraged. We have often not accepted aluminum because it is discouraged on our guidelines. But you had also mentioned that we always turn down your projects, but we don't. I can remember projects you brought before us that we've been highly in favor of and praised for the wonderful things that you're doing for the town. That it's not, Jim, you had mentioned at 56 minutes and 49 seconds into it, that aluminum is not a preferable material. So, satisfaction, everything's... Commissioner Clark mentioned it 1 hour and 2 minutes into it, that there should be and could be, and that everything is so vague. We needed to tie some things down. And another commissioner said we just need things, at 1 hour, 5 minutes, we just need things to be clear. At 1:06, you have said like 30 doors, 35 doors, 40 doors, it goes back and forth, 30, and then now it's 40 doors or up to 40 doors. We did ask at 6 minutes, 1 hour, 6 minutes, would you please let us continue this? Because we need some answers to this. You've submitted new material. Would you allow us to continue it? And you declined it. You said you just want to get a vote on it. I would still, Town Councilor Nick Atzlis was also in attendance, and he just said, just get a vote on it. So we want to do well by the people that come before us. We have a reputation. I've been chairman for about 7 years now. I have tried to make a standpoint that we try very hard to work with people, with our applicants. Sometimes there's some stumbling blocks. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes we tweak it. But we have worked very, very hard, and I think our numbers prove that. I can't remember the exact numbers. I probably should have got them. Karen, you probably have them because you're the one that keeps the list on how many we approved last year and how many were declined, if you have that. Do you have it off the top of your head?
No, that's in your annual report. It goes by
Okay.
each year.
Well, I think it's usually about 3 we decline and like 30, 40
Not very
something.
many.
Yeah, it's very unusual because we want to make it happen. We want to help the applicants to get it, but you have to work with us in order for us to try to make it fit into the purview as best we can. But we can't accept things like it's whatever the market dictates. We just can't put that in a certificate of appropriateness. I also will need to go back and check that tape. I do remember that the certificate of findings did not pass, and I'll have to look at the tape, but it is so rare that we don't find a way to make something happen. I'll have to look at the tape too and see what's what on there. I would still invite you to come back to us. Answer the questions. Let us work with you and see if we can find some way. But I will say I was disturbed that your last comments were at 1 hour and 11 minutes. You commented as you were leaving the door, and I should have thought about it and say you're still on camera. You put an 8-foot, so we'll put an 8-foot fence all around the place for the next 20 years. What about just working with us and letting us help you to find something that'll work? We're sincere about that, and I think our record stands to that. And I have, Mr. Cowley has written his, because I did call and tell him that this was happening tonight, and he said, it's my birthday, Cheryl, but I do want to comment. So, and that's where it is. I think we try very hard to abide by our guidelines. We try very hard to help the town, but we can't. When we say we can't just, I don't know how many times you said whatever the market dictates. How long is a piece of string? So I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I want to say something, if I may. This is a new venture for us, and boats come in a lot of sizes. Some people don't need big and used. I indicated that we would maximize no more than 40 doors, and the building stays the same. The difference of the door sizes. Nothing can change till we get more into the project. That was the biggest crux of it. We haven't asked Frank, there's nothing else we could do with the project unless we put more buildings on there and make it more dense. The buildings and the look is the same. Like I said earlier in this presentation, instead of 8 doors, we may have 10 doors. Instead of 10 doors, we may have 6 doors. But it doesn't change the look of the building. There are some people that have small boats that can't afford to pay $200 a month, want to pay $100 a month. So we left the option open of the doors, what they would be. That's number one. Number two, Ms. Powell is a great manipulator of words. If you watch the 21 minutes of video that she did in front of the planning board, I'll tell you, it's an Emmy performance. And if you got nothing to do, we sent it in, her and Ms. Cheryl. Just watch it. She does nothing to help me. She does everything she can to bait me. What are you going to do? Change this and change that. Kept loading up more questions and more questions and more questions. And I explained to her several times, this is what we're building. This is the height. Nothing changes. I can come back 15 times. You can pick your colors. You got the landscaping. I meet all the requirements. And they kept going on and on and on. There's not much. They can come in with all the questions. It doesn't change what's going to be there. And I'm limited. It's a small site. I think there's only 12,000 feet of building on an acre and a half all in. Not a lot of density. As architects, you can appreciate that. We're entitled to put as much as 60% on this, which we didn't go anywhere near that. And I don't believe I'm going to ever get a positive vote because it's just not in the makeup of my experience with the board. Anytime I've been in front of there, they go out of their way to aggravate the situation. And I've been in front of boards for 50 years in this town. I have spent $897,000 over 25 years trying to approve something. Now, $897,000. Finally, I threw in the towel. It's a matter of right here. I built something simple. I don't need any utilities. It's 16 feet high at the peak, and it goes down to 13 or 14 feet at the gutter line. It's simple. It's elegant for what it is, and it doesn't require a ton of work. And and I don't know why I've had so much opposition. I mean, and as architects, I don't think there's much more I could do to improve what I did here. This was vetted out by 4 different companies to make it better. I think we did a good job. You can always do something more, and she wanted something nautical. I says, I'll put lobster traps, fish, what do you want to do? Make it nautical. It's what it is. And because we store boats with gasoline, we have to have a fireproof building, and the metal is what is required. Yeah, you could build a block building, but you can't afford the cost on it for what we do here. And today, with the metal that has smooth surfaces, it's not the old metal buildings you see around town. These are nice, sleek-looking finishes. You can see the Audi garage with it. You can see the Cape Cod 5 building. That's all metal. All the stuff out there. It's similar to what's out there. We're proposing, we have a storage facility out in Mashpee. And what's nice about this, it is clean. There's not a lot of activity on here. It's strictly a storage facility for marine use. If you're a scuba diver, a lobster man, whatever you need, you'll have the rights to end up in using this. And whether I go back to historical, I don't know what I could do that would do any more to satisfy what I've done. I really feel that in the bottom of my heart. I mean, they'll give me 50 questions. It doesn't change what we have here. I can't make any more with this. This is what it is. And there's no sense. You're going to give me a tough time no matter what I go back. Go back 10 times. You'll never approve this. Go prove it in 21 minutes of what you did to me in front of that planning board, like Banshee Indians screaming your head off.
Oh, okay, we have to keep it to
I'm sorry. I
what
get very
we're doing.
emotional about this. I'm sorry. I apologize.
May I just address a couple issues, and they're to Ms. Powell's comments. If you remember, I started at the beginning talking about newspaper boxes on Beacon Hill, okay? And what the Supreme Judicial Court was saying is that commissions, historical commissions, when they make a decision, they act in writing so it can be reviewed. Ms. Powell stated what a number of members said at various times, but they act by the majority. If one member says, well, if you did this, I might be in favor of it, that doesn't mean that the majority of it is. The only thing that you have as an actual decision is that document that I pointed out at the beginning. And that's what, there's one thing about a vote on findings. There's not even a denial of a certificate of appropriateness. Quite interestingly, too, I found it kind of unique because I've dealt with a lot of historical issues. The Hyannis Waterfront Historic District suggests that the committee perhaps include in their denials reasons on how to improve it specifically. And the opportunity was there but wasn't taken. Ms. Powell has mentioned a number of things that were stated, but that doesn't necessarily, one individual statement is not the whole board's statements. If Mr. Bornstein might make one member happy by making that change, only to make another member unhappy. I think you have to look at what the decision was, what is there, and as I say, the only thing we brought that wasn't before the board were a few pictures that is just showing the area. There's nothing set up different. Went down there, go down there tomorrow and see exactly the same thing. Probably different trucks, mind you. In any event, I don't think we have anything more to say.
Do we have any other public comment? No. Do you want to step up?
This seat here, I've already warmed up the microphone for you.
Good evening, Laura Cronin. I also am a member of the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission. And I just have a couple comments. I would support what Chairman Powell has just said about the process and all of the issues that we have come across and tried to work with applicants that come before us, including Mr. Bornstein. There were a couple of things that, just from the process that we stamp, that it kind of looks that we may have just done one step, but there is a couple of steps that we do before us. And one of it is to vote on the appropriateness for the historic district. And if there's a no vote, it doesn't go to that second vote, which then the committee then does the other part of the historical. So I think that first one where it came out no, it didn't pass. That's why it stops right there. If that does yes, then we also vote on a second appropriateness, which is then an opportunity again for some of the discussion, and/or we would then be able to put some, caveats or subject to things that may be working with the planning or the applicant. So again, we would take a look at the process, but I thought the process went okay. Again, just some comments that were said earlier about that property, the town let it sit for 20 years. Mr. Bornstein has owned the property for all this time as well. So it just didn't all of a sudden just be vacant. It's his land, his property, and he did clean it up after some issues, but he did own it up until then. And then I just think from the day that we have before us, the information we had before us on, I'm new to the committee, by the way, I just came on board, so I wasn't for any other, I think this is the first thing that Mr. Bornstein has brought while I've been on the committee, but the first one we had was on May 7th, and the date of the application was April 6th, and the information with that had certain pictures, criterias, and layouts. We had questions for that, and we did come back with a number of different materials, as well as some options for roof line and other things. And he did come back. The May 17th one, I think, got changed, but we went to June 7th, and the same application was before us, dated April 6th, with the same information on it. And that's kind of where I was looking at a new design that was before us, or new colors or schemes and shape, but there was no new application that matched the what was before us. He kept saying you can take whatever colors you want, you can do it this and that, and we said, okay, let's narrow it down. We've got a new view of the building. That's something that we can look at, but would like to have it, at least the application match the building and the materials before us, and that's where we did offer to have it one more time. And once it was not accepted, then we do vote to see whether or not it would be meeting the Historic Commission process. But thank you very much.
Sure, thank you.
I came back the second time. They asked for a rendering. I had a rendering made. The lady lives in Virginia, believe it or not. My architect used her. Very nice lady. And she made me a rendering. And the application we submitted was the original application. Materials were always the same. Nothing changed the materials. The door count vacillated a little bit, but the building size was consistent. Nothing changed on it. We're getting into minute items that really shouldn't make a difference. We did add windows on the side to make it more compatible with the neighborhood. I didn't put that in the application. I thought the picture would speak for itself. And this is it.
Okay, do we have any other public, any other comments?
I want to thank Laura for clarifying about the voting thing. I forgot to mention that it doesn't pass the first thing.
Thank you.
And those are written up by the town. I think yours is probably there as well.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to close the public comment portion of the meeting.
And to clarify, that also closes comments by the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah, so no new information is brought forward. It's now time for this committee to deliberate.
Okay. So I guess we're putting aside the question of a null or the documentation of the meeting. Is that something that staff can go back and look at, how this was recorded or what was right? Or do you feel comfortable presenting based on the presentation, or would you rather continue?
I feel like and we've continued. I
Oh,
wish
yeah.
that we had sort of addressed that initially. I feel like there was a real hiccup at the beginning. Maybe how that was presented could have been reconsidered. On the other hand, if you're comfortable discussing this, then you
That's
might as
fine.
well, so we don't waste everybody's time.
Okay.
Okay.
May I make one
But your comments are
suggestion?
closed.
No, just a suggestion, not about the project, okay? You have a certain time frame. I don't know what the
It's
number
30
was.
days
To
from
make a
the-
decision.
No, to hear this. We have the right to continue.
Right, mutually agreed upon to extend beyond the 30 days.
Right, well, I just, there are issues of getting to that.
Oh, thank
And I
you.
didn't know whether you had some time period, where that time period stood, because if you wanted to have a meeting in 1 week solely to deliberate or whatever, based on advice of
They're
counsel.
delivering right now, leave it.
Yeah, no, you have that as a potential option, that's all.
I think we should just make it clear, if you agree,
Go.
that our decision tonight is not taking into consideration
Correct.
the potential annulment of the board's decision
Everything.
based on a separate factor
Yes.
that was brought up.
Okay. Okay, do you want to start, Mary Ann, or?
So, I think that, there seems to be differences of opinion. I hear you use words like, it's not a bad-looking project. I couldn't do much better, right? It's the best we could do, et cetera. These are things that, are very much about opinion, right? But I would like to, I could say that I disagree with each one of those,
Okay.
right? To say it's not a bad-looking project is pretty a low denominator to sort of start with. And that's not really what we aspire to. We don't aspire to make not bad-looking projects. We aspire to make great-looking projects. So I do question whether this is the best that you could come up with. We're professionals. We're design professionals. And so I want to kind of approach this from a sort of not opinionated point of view. So I will start with one thing that I think could help. Page 27 of the guidelines that the committee uses to sort of understand and evaluate talks specifically about garages and outbuildings. So it's interesting that you would bring up the garage building across the street to me, because it specifically says that garage buildings should be well hidden and tucked behind. Those are the quoted words that are used from the guidelines that the committee uses.
Well, that's kind of difficult to do with a self-storage facility.
Excuse me, sir, but public comment is closed. It is not impossible nor difficult to consider that these buildings should be perceived as well hidden or tucked behind. I'm not your architect, but I do know after 30 years of being in the business that it's possible. I'm taking this directly from the guidelines. I'm not using opinions. That's the recommendation. It also says in the guidelines that aluminum is discouraged. Now, I understand why you're using aluminum for the fireproofing, but I also know that there is an abundance of products out in the industry right now that would help this not seem like an aluminum product from a distance. It's very hard for me to tell from your rendering that this is not a corrugated aluminum building, and I haven't seen anything submitted of a specification of exactly what the cladding would be. So without that, I can only assume that it is some sort of corrugated, and I would consider that to be inappropriate.
It's not, it's not corrugated.
It's just that we don't have that information.
Okay, I'm sorry.
In terms of kind of referencing the distinctive qualities of an historic district, I would say that there hasn't really been much effort to do that at all. The roofs, the angle of the gable is actually practically flat, and it, aside from wondering sort of how much volume is inside and how stacking two boats on top of each other is not going to work. I don't know. But that aside, purely as a volume, I would say that I don't think every effort has made to actually reference the historic quality of the neighborhood, considering it's practically a 3 or 4% angle, which is the bare minimum that you're allowed for a metal roof without putting a rubber roof on. So I wouldn't consider that to be actually an effort to duplicate the character of the neighborhood. There's things like trim. There's reference of other outbuildings, storage buildings. In the meeting minutes, the committee did reference other storage buildings that you could use as inspiration. They talked about barns. There's other storage buildings for boats on Cape Cod that are highly revered. And I don't see any reference to any of those in these buildings. This is a detail, and it hasn't really been brought up much, but there's also a real push in the district to use native plantings and pollinator gardens. And so it would be interesting if this does continue to see how that allows and is tied into that big effort to make sure that our landscape also reflects our history. Those are my comments.
Okay. I was going to comment a little more specifically on the meetings and listening to the 2 hours or so that we heard of discussion, both from your initial application and the continuation. And I do think there was a good effort to improve what was originally presented. I think what was originally presented was more of the flat roofs, and I agree these aren't right. It's more of a flat roof metal building, and this is much more attractive than the original application. So I do think there is an improvement, but I don't think it's unreasonable to have the application updated to reflect, the materials that are being used. As Mary Ann said, we don't know what the materials are because there's nothing on the application. Like the door part was open. And I wanted to just talk about the doors too, because one thing that's shown in this rendering is all the doors are standard sizes and they're all the same. And while this is maybe not the most attractive storage building that there is, one thing that's nice about it is that there are these uniform doors, right? And so those all march down and they look attractive. But when you go into a meeting and have open-ended door sizes, I find that to be problematic. I don't think you're ready to apply for the historic board if you don't know what the doors are, what the door heights are. I think that's an important piece of this. I think we're missing like an elevation that shows the roof pitch, that shows the door height. While this rendering is beautiful for the landscaping and sort of like how the buildings, I appreciate the long, narrow, and that they're short, and they provide these views out to the harbor. But in the grand scheme of things, I heard members of the board struggling with this location, how it's so important. Is this the right project for here? And fear of like a precedent for these kinds of buildings being stamped onto sites when this is actually a really beautiful or really important site at the edge of the harbor and the historic district and the town. And could we, this kind of real pause about, is this enough of a project for this special site? And I think those are all reasonable questions and deliberations. So my personal feeling is I think that I stand in favor of upholding the decision. I think that they spent a lot of time reviewing this. And I do think the application was incomplete and not quite ready for review. So I don't know if you want us to vote or you want us to continue and get more information regarding the not the minutes, what is this called? The determination of disapproval.
I think I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion to uphold the denial decision for the certificate of appropriateness for 110 School Street and 115 School Street.
Okay. I second the motion. Then do you want to vote?
I vote yes.
Vote yes to uphold
to uphold
the commission.
the denial decision for a certificate of appropriateness for 110 School Street and 115 School Street.
I vote yes to uphold. Okay. I guess.
Sorry, real quick. There was a motion, so a motion, and then there was a second.
Yes, I second. Yes.
And then 2 yeses. So all in favor. Okay.
Yes. Okay, we need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Allison. Thank you.